Hey everyone, this is James from TDB bringing you another Inbetweenisode. Today I will be drinking Inbetweenisode, but this is just the quick introduction to it. Going to be bringing on a Banzhang, Banzhang in fact, tea from Banzhang versus an Yiwu tea from Tea Encounter. So you might be like, why this comparison? Well, usually I like to do comparisons of teas that are very similar to each other, but occasionally it's nice to do something kind of off the wall, mix it up a little bit, and just see where things shake. One of the reasons I like to compare similar teas is it really highlights differences between them. So that's usually the purpose of doing that. So to see which Yiwu is a little stronger, which one's better, things like that. But comparing teas that are very different from one another from very different areas, I think could be interesting too. And so why do this exactly? Well, one of the reasons is it's nice to just sometimes challenge what assumptions you have going in. So how do I expect this comparison to play out, and why would I not do this comparison normally? Well, the main reason why I wouldn't do it normally is just because we would expect that the Banzhang is just so strong it's going to blow flavor from the Yiwu out of the water, which is considered to be kind of one of the more subtle reasons. That being said, I don't know if I've ever really tried this, so definitely going to get a bit caffeinated here, specifically from the Banzhang. And these are definitely two of the most famous areas, both kind of areas that have a long history of growing pu'erh. So yeah, we'll see if it plays out theoretically, plays out in real life how we would expect it to play out theoretically. So going to be looking at how similar these do. Can I taste the Yiwu? What does Yiwu taste like after doing Banzhang? And trying to evaluate what I learned at the end of it. So yeah, I have not recorded the next part yet. So I'm going to do that now. So let's get caffeinated. Okay, so we are here. I am brewing the Yiwu here on my left. This is the Zhensilang Manlin. And on my right, I have the Chenshanghao Lao Banzhang. Different years. I'm sorry, guys. It's an imperfect comparison, but it was going to be an imperfect comparison from the start. We wouldn't expect that to matter. I would still anticipate the tasting to go kind of that same way that I was outlining earlier. But we'll start with the Yiwu tea. So not going to get blown out of the water on the first one because we have yet to taste the Lao Banzhang. So unlike other comparisons, I did not have one first. So we would expect it to take a little bit of time to get into the meat of the brewing. I'm using 4 grams for 70 milliliters. I'm going a little lighter than I normally would on that just because it's a lot of tea, so I have not been drinking in that capacity normally. So yeah, that is the Manlin. Let's go over to this, and then we'll take a quick smell. So this is the Chenshanghao Lao Banzhang. Did note that the Lao Banzhang's compression was a lot looser than the Zhensilang. Pour this out. And so I believe the Manlin was stored in Xishuangbanna or somewhere in Yunnan for a little bit of time, and then moved over. So as expected, this is a little lighter. Fresh fruit, very floral notes from the LBZ. And let's compare it with the Manlin. Darker fruit, stuff like that going on. So definitely a little more aged. In fact, if anything, this emphasizes that these teas from Tea Encounter have aged a bit. So nice body, kind of broad wood fruit. Yeah, not a bad tea by any stretch of the imagination. Yeah, and just very nice mellow profile. I'd say this is probably one of the more straightforward, kind of those 6 famous tea mountains areas. I believe Manlin is kind of associated with Manzhuan area within those mountains. Yeah, nice and solid. The bitterness in it is very light. So let's go over to tea that we would not expect the bitterness to be very light from. Cheers. So it definitely emphasizes the floral notes. It's actually not terribly bitter on this first steep. So we'll see how that evolves as time goes on. Yeah, actually, kind of that brown sugar. You could tell this is a little greener notes. But it doesn't taste super strong yet. Now, this is the first steep, so let's see how things change. I don't intend to do 10 steeps each of these, so I'm probably aiming for 3 or 4, just because this is, just could be some pretty strong ones. So, going to be going reverse order this time. So, the Zhenshenghe first. And I am using 1 Chahai. Again, this is just a very unofficial comparison, so we're not doing any competition here. And the point isn't even necessarily to prove that one tea is better than the other. The comparison here is more to see how the dynamic of the comparisons work, if exactly as we would expect it to, or a little differently. Okay, let's take a smell. More or less the same. Stronger nose on this, just fresher florals, that sort of thing. So in this sense, it has emphasized a little bit of the differences. Denny and I did bring the Walang from Zhensilong onto an episode, and the tea tasted still pretty fresh. Drinking it like this, the age difference is definitely emphasized on the Zhensilong. I didn't necessarily expect that to be totally the case here, but the fact that it is coming across, especially on the first couple steeps, is interesting and worth noting. Cheers. Sticking with kind of that brown sugariness, the bitterness by no means is overwhelming yet. So very interesting. I think I might. Okay, here it comes a little bit of that like drying sensation. Yeah, might need to lean on these a little bit more than I anticipated. Either that, or it's just starting to come into its own. There's a bit of a bitterness kind of hitting a little bit later. It's still lingering bitter. I'd anticipate it to kind of convert to sweetness shortly. Yeah, kind of just a very basic brown sugar floral profile so far for this. So the Manlin, let's go. Cheers. So again, these side-by-side comparisons are pretty bad at picking out specific aftertaste ones, just because it's hard to know what to attribute to what tea. So a little bit of the characteristics are going to be muddled. They are good for telling kind of the big, kind of basic side-by-side profiles, how they differ. Cheers. Okay, body-wise, it's lighter, so that is definitely emphasized. It's also tasting very sweet. Not a characteristic that would be unknown to Yiwu, but I think perhaps sweeter than the tea would be without the side-by-side. Yeah, very, very sweet. A lot of kind of that grapey muscatel, if you want to be really fancy, coming across here. Definitely a little bit more of a softer, lighter texture to it. The body of the Zhenshenghe is bigger. Texturally, the Zhenshenghe had some interesting stuff going on as well. Okay, so let's do steep number 3. I think I boiled that recently enough, so we will do this one. So again, going in reverse order. Probably going to do 4 steeps of this each, which is a lot, but until the teas have stabilized a little bit, I want to keep it going. That is Manlin. the Banzhang. Let me make sure I have enough water in here for another steep. Sure. Very borderline, but we'll say it's good. Okay, pour this out and then do a quick smell. I'd say the Banzhang has changed a little bit in aroma. Just a little bit sweeter, raisins, things like that getting emphasized, so a bit more of those. Definitely still staying in kind of that wood fruit realm, but perhaps just a touch different. Cheers. Yeah, so darkening just a bit. Darker wood, darker fruits. Yeah, contrast quite a bit different than the Walong, which, for me at least, when I had that with Denny, it felt quite green still. So I didn't expect the age emphasis to be quite so strong. Cheers. Okay. Whoa, okay. There is the bitterness. Okay, it is hitting hard now. And, perhaps this would have been better done with a tea I know better rather than with a unknown sample here for our sitting in as the Yiwu. The problem I have is that almost all of the Yiwus I know better are even more aged than this. So I'm drinking 15-year-old Yiwus and things like that rather than 8 years old. So the age difference is even bigger, but just so I would know the profile of it so I can contrast my memory of what it's like in a solo session versus this side-by-side. But... okay, this is now really hitting the bitter profile. So I would expect the overpowering to commence at this point. Woo, that is a rush of caffeine and stuff like that. So I'm just curious to know if the Banzhang is normally as mellow as it's starting to come across now. There's a bit of that kind of like pill numbing happening here too. I can definitely feel just stuff starting to, feel my body starting to really, really get energized by that tea. Okay, so last steep number 4. Let's let these go for 10 seconds, so try to keep that. Okay, and 10 seconds on this as well. So if there's any steep that's really going to blow one out of the water and just make it very difficult to taste, it's probably going to be this one. I didn't expect it to make the Yiwu just taste so sweet, but that's what kind of the last steep emphasized really to me is like the Yiwu starts to taste a little lighter, a little sweeter. I could still definitely taste it though. So I kind of expected something to be just a little more bland. Okay, so we'll say that's about 10. Okay. Nothing really notable about the aromas. Everything more or less as expected. Cheers. The bitterness is not overwhelming, but it's definitely strong. The tea is reasonably thick. I wouldn't say it's like overwhelming in thickness, but let's really see how this contrasts now with the Banzhang. Cheers. Yeah, now the Banzhang is quite difficult to taste. Kind of has a very basic sweet tasteness, and Yeah, I would say that at this point it is starting to get overpowered. So the results happened a little bit slower than I expected, but I do think if I were to continue doing subsequent steepings, the Monlin would just get overpowered with what is just the much stronger tea. It doesn't taste bad, but it just tastes kind of like vaguely sweet, vaguely woody sweet, and doesn't have a ton of complexity. And that's just not because the tea doesn't have that, just because my palate is impacted by this. So yeah, that for this episode kind of came across my mind when I was drinking this Chen Chung Hao Lao Banzhang with Denny. I was trying to think of other episodes ideas I could do just because it's kind of an interesting tea to come across. And we were talking about kind of where and when you would drink this tea. And so the answer that we came up with, yeah, it'd be a good tea to session with another tea person. But where in the session would you do it? And I think we both came to the conclusion we would do it last, just so it's not overpowering other teas. And I think that's probably, again, where I would lie here. So the results were a little bit slower to reveal themselves, but I think I would more or less stand by kind of my initial assumptions for this, that the stronger tea does overpower the other one. The other one doesn't taste bad per se, but I think you do lose out on maybe a little bit of the nuances and subtleties and the pleasures of something like a subtler Yiwu tea versus kind of just the loud and brashness of something like this. So a good reason to conclude on this. So yeah, I am going to now go for a run to work out all this energy, and then I'll probably come back and drink these teas more solo rather than all at once. So thank you all for tuning in. I'll see y'all next time. Cheers.